is so fragile, and we're constantly reminded just how fragile life can be, especially when we or a loved one is told we have cancer. Cancer survivor myself, I can tell you, we still feel very alone in this journey.
There's a study that's been showing that patients who are socially isolated have a worse prognosis, have a worse outcome than patients who are socially interconnected.
Buddies for Life is a non-profit cancer support group for those whose life has been impacted by cancer. We'll match you with the perfect buddy. Humor, hope, heart, and hugs.
Humor, hope, heart, hugs, and a whole lot of love.
We're offering you a free membership, so please sign up today. Share this with your friends and family, and support this community in every way you can. No one should face cancer alone.
I am a chemo buddy for life.
We are a buddies network.
No one does cancer alone.
Be a buddy.
And we are all here for you as a community of love.
We are chemo buddies for life.
And if you've heard 3 words, you have cancer, for yourself or someone else, you belong with us at Chemo Buddies for Life.
Healing through connections.
Good morning. Bonjour. Comment ça va? Et toi? Ça va très bien. Merci. Ni hao. Hola. Ohio. Bienvenue. Wan Ying. Bienvenidos. And welcome. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunter Stories. My name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemological storyteller. And each and every week, I get the privilege and the honor of coming into your home and taking you on a journey to places you've never been before, to stories you've never heard before. Each and every week, I get the magnificent opportunity to take you on a mental, spiritual, and physical adventure into the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry. And I do this because I know the transformational powers of stories. I know what stories can do. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen to other people. I've experienced it for myself. So I am absolutely confident that somewhere along this journey, you're going to hear a story that will move you. A story that will make you look at the world in a different way. And each and every week, my job, my mission is to create a sound that no one has ever heard. A sound that will resonate inside of you when you begin to hear the music that's inside of your heart and inside of your mind. And my hope is that you take that sound and use it as a template, as a bridge, as an inception point to help you along your journey of discovering the value of your own stories. This is the first show of the brand new year. So happy New Year's to everyone. Happy holidays. I hope you had a great time, thinking, celebrating, bringing in the new year, even though with everything going on in the world. I want to start this show out with a number. 828,000. As most of you know, I teach science and history to children all around the world. And each week I will start my week with my cell phone and I'll ask Google how many people have died in the United States due to the coronavirus. And when I did it this morning, I was in Shanghai this morning, I said 828,000. Over 5 million people worldwide who are no longer with us, no longer able to continue on with their story. So when I say that number, when we say that number, 828,000 people just here in the United States. Think about it, what number that is. Google that number for your country, since we're in different countries all over the world. What is that number for you in your country? And what I want to do is, I don't want to depress you with the politics and the political manifestations and machinations in regards to dealing with this coronavirus. What I want to do is get you down to the bottom line. There's 828,000 people whose story has come to an end in regards to what they're telling, the story that they're able to tell. So I want to start this new year out, the first show in the new year, reminding us of the importance of being able to tell your story. People ask me all the time, how did I get into storytelling? And for those of you who don't know, I'm a Toastmaster. So in fact, it's interesting. This show this month is the 10th anniversary of me competing in what's called the International Speech Contest. I started Toastmasters, and Toastmasters is a worldwide organization. There's clubs in every country, really. 300,000 members. And each year they have a contest where you get to speak in front of an audience for 7 minutes and 30 seconds. And 10 years ago, I won. I won not only the International Speech Contest, but I also won what's called table topics, where you have to speak extemporaneously about a topic. So when people ask me, how did I get into storytelling? Why is storytelling so important to me? It's because that's where I began to truly understand the power of stories. And it didn't actually start. A lot of people think it started when I was homeless. The material, the bricks, the understanding started with As a Man Thinketh, the book I tell you about all the time that I keep, as you see, handy right here. This is the book that As a Man Thinketh, okay? And we talked about that in other shows, but the way it all came together, the 7 elements, those of you who've watched my show for a while, thank you, or have been to one of my workshops, I always talk about the 7 elements of storytelling. Sound as a refresher. You should have this in your notes. The 7 elements of storytelling: sound, passion, the hero, the antagonist, which is the most important part of any story, the antagonist, the obstacle, the thing that you have to overcome. And it could be internal or external. awareness, transformation, and sound again. So today's show, what I want you to understand is the first step, because this is a brand new year. And I think, at least the way I start my new year is I always think about what is my sound. Remember, the first sound is the initial direction that you should take. So to me, when you start, today is January 5th. So hopefully in the last 4 or 5 days, you are beginning to think about what is your sound? What is the direction that you want to take in your life? And if you didn't think about it before, I want you to take a moment to start to think about it now, because there are 828,000 people, 5 million worldwide, who will not have that chance ever. I talk about every week, I make the connection between gemstones and people. And the one thing that I don't say when I talk about gemstones and people is that gemstones are going to last. This is going to be a gemstones tanzanite. This is going to be here for thousands. It was here thousands of years before me, and it's going to be here thousands of years after me. So even though there are analogies between gemstones and people, the one thing that we don't have in common is the fact of longevity. This sapphire will be here thousands of years from this point. Diamonds, even though diamonds are not forever, diamonds, even though the fact that diamonds are thermogenically inactive, unstable, I should say. So eventually diamonds will fade off, but that won't be for millions and millions of years. So the thing that brings the analogy between people and gemstones lie in the stories. It's just that gemstones have millions and millions of years to develop their stories. We don't. So when I competed in the international speech contest, because of the way I think, as a kid, I used to always play. I used to be that kid that I was a little skinny kid, believe it or not. I was a little skinny kid. And when I played, I always played for the championship of the world. So for me, the international speech contest was that opportunity, that 7 minutes and 30 seconds to say something in front of the world. And I didn't really begin to understand how to put that together. Like a lot of people, I coach a lot of people in storytelling or businesses. And the concept is, what is your story? What do you want to say? What is your sound? And of the 7 elements, the thing that got me started was that movie Amadeus. Amadeus was the story of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, this guy. And I was sitting there in the movie theater watching this movie, and I remember, to me, of the whole movie, the thing that was most profound was the description of Mozart's music. When Antonio Salieri, who was a real guy, he was a noted composer at that period of time, the same time Mozart was around, when he first saw Mozart's music, at first on the page it was nothing. The music simple, almost comic, just a pulse, basset horns, bassoons, like something from an old rusty squeeze box. And then suddenly, high above it, an oboe. A single note hanging there, unwavering, until a clarinet took it over. Sweeten it to a phrase of such delight. This isn't a composition from a performing monkey. This was a music I had never heard, filled with such longing, such unfulfillable longing that it seemed to me as if I was listening to the voice of God. When I heard that, it was as if a lightning bolt just struck me right in the top of my head. I was sitting in the theater and I knew that I had been transformed right then and there. I didn't understand everything. It just resonated. It was just this feeling, because what he was saying at that moment was profound, at least to me. It was that lightning bolt hit me was just like lightning, the way lightning or light hits a gemstone. When the light hits a gemstone, such as a gemstone is tanzanite, the light can switch into different rays. It's pleiochronic, meaning the light comes in and it splits into separate waves. So therefore you could see different colors. And for me, that quote hit me and split into two different rays of light. The first direction that light took me was understanding that despite the first direction it took me was the understanding that it was possible, to create, to cook, to make, to design, to have an idea so profound, so extraordinary that years later someone can look and listen to something that you created and they describe it as hearing the voice of God. That's how he described his music. And if you saw the movie, he was describing it years later. He was in his 80s, 90 years old when he described Mozart's music, but that's how it touched him. And I thought to myself at that moment, what would it be like to create something like that in my lifetime? I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how I was doing it, but I was moved by the fact that he took something, the music inside of him, and made it into something extraordinary. The other ray of light that hit me, which was at least equally powerful, is the understanding that no matter how good you are, no matter how good you look, no matter the shape of your body, your hair, your skin, your color, male, female, no matter how good you are in your life at doing or creating or making or designing anything, everyone is not going to hear your sound. They're not. I'm going to compete this year in the International Speech Contest, and that is the title of my speech, Your Sound. Everyone is not going to hear your sound. So when I heard Salieri describe Mozart's music, like that, I knew that was a direction that I took. I just needed to find what my sound was, and I began to understand that and been reinforced over and over again that no matter what I say, no matter what ideas in my mind may be, no matter how powerful it is, everyone is not going to hear my sound. Think about it. Mozart lived to be 35 years old. He had created over 600 pieces of music, and many of them were considered masterpieces at his time, at when he was alive, and yet he died penniless. Mozart had a horrible life. He had issues with his father. I definitely could relate to that. Not with my father. For me, it was my mother. He had issues with his mother, his father. His father, who was a composer of his own right, he made Mozart. It probably would be considered abusive at that time. He made Mozart all the time. He took Mozart around Europe as a child. Mozart started when he was 4, and he performed in front of kings and queens and Marie Antoinette and everybody. And yet he died penniless. He had 6 kids, 3 of them died in childbirth. Going again to the issues that he had with his dad. His father didn't agree with him marrying his wife, Constanza, and he died penniless. And when he died, they just threw him in a hole. Peace out later. And yet, 217 years later, I'm sitting there in my living room, and the very first commercial that Comcast, the system that I'm using, the worldwide media company of Comcast, when they first introduced the system that I'm on right now, the Xfinity, the Infinity system, Xfinity system. You know whose music they used? They used Mozart's. They used his music. They used his sound. And what made me realize is how is it that someone that could create something like that, and yet at his time, people did not understand him. People did not feel him. People did not hear his sound. It got me to thinking. As I teach science and history to kids, I begin to see how that resonates. That Mozart is not the only one. I think about another hero of mine, Galileo. Galileo Galilei. Galileo, like Mozart, was a genius. Galileo is now seen as the father of modern science. And yet, in his time, when he lived, he was threatened not only with just death, but the kind of death that they were doing in those days, the Spanish Inquisition. And he knew the Pope. And because Galileo, like Mozart, was aware of his talent, his antagonist was internal. They felt the need to let the world know that they were geniuses and you're not. So therefore, that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And what Galileo said was that the earth wasn't in the center of the solar system. The sun was. Understanding what Copernicus had said. But Galileo was just bold enough to say it. And he told the Pope, no, you're wrong. The Pope was his friend as he was elevated to become the Pope. And so he dared to call the Pope a simpleton. He wrote a book. It was like one of those, like the way rap stars have, Puffy versus Tupac, East Coast versus West Coast. That's what Galileo did with the Pope. And the Pope was like, no. He was reading a book one day, and the character in the book was named Simpleton. And he was using Galileo wrote the book, and he was using the Pope's words as the words of the character simpleton. So he was basically calling the Pope simple, stupid. And the Pope was like, no, we're not having that. So despite the fact of Galileo being who Galileo was, despite all the things that Galileo had created and saw and designed and figured out, despite all that, they arrested Galileo and they gave him a choice: either denounce everything that you've said, everything that you know, denounce it. And first they were going to kill him. They were like, well, okay, maybe we don't want to do that. But they put him under house arrest for the last 15 years of his life. They didn't even, when he died, they didn't even allow him to be buried where he wanted to be buried. They buried him like in a whole nother state. Like, I'm living in Illinois, I'm from New York, so maybe those would be my choices. So imagine if they buried me in Bangladesh. Everybody is not going to hear your sound. And when I first started speaking after winning the international speech contest 10 years ago, one of the places I spoke was a college. And at that college, it was the 400th anniversary of Galileo. That Galileo finally was recognized 400 years later that he was right. That everything that he said was right. This is the same man that discovered the moons of Jupiter. And yet everybody is not, that didn't hear his sound. And so when you are beginning to think about what you want to say, what do you want to say? As I tell my clients, people who I trained for the international speech contest, because it's a really big thing to stand on the world stage, and for 7 minutes and 30 seconds, you get a chance to speak to the world. As I tell my clients all the time, don't just say something. Don't just give a speech. The difference between a speech and a story is that a speech can influence, can empower the people that are sitting in the room. But a story has a power of not only empowering the people that are in the room, but empowering the people that were nowhere in the room. Empowering people who years from now hear your story because the person who was in the room at that time who heard your story was moved, was transformed by something that you did. They heard your sound and that sound resonated with them. And years later, decades later, hundreds and years later, people are still saying your story, your speech, your idea. So as you begin to think about what you want to say, what you want to do, this being the 5th day of the brand new year, 2022, what is your sound? When Dr. Osterholm said the middle of December, he literally said, he looked into the screen and he said that there are 36,000 people who think that they're going to think, he said, I mean, this is what he said, who they think that they're going to see the new year, the Christmas in the new year, and they're lying to themselves. And again, I'm not here, it's too early in the morning to get into Republicans, Democrats, right, wrong, whether it's conspiracy theory. What I want you to understand is that 828,000 people who are no longer here, and we are blessed to, those of us who are still here are blessed to be here. And the question that I'm asking you today, and I literally ask you each and every week, is to discover your story, discover your sound, because that is the only way you get to understand who you are. Who you are as a person. And when you begin to understand that's when you'll begin to see the power of what you can do of your story. And we'll talk about that and more on the other side. All right, we're back. And thank you for joining me. If we just came on, and what we're talking about today is the importance of looking at the brand new year, looking at your life and saying to yourself what direction you want to take. And as I said in the early segment, that first of all, you have to begin to understand that not just that anything is possible, that is true. Everything is possible. The way you get there is you have to create a story. You have to create a story, not just for other people, not for an audience. It's not, everybody doesn't want to become a professional speaker or a professional storyteller. The most important person that you have to tell a story to is to yourself. Because when you understand what stories do, when you understand that despite how wonderful your story may be, everyone is not going to hear your sound, then you understand that in order for a story to really take you where you need to go in your life, you have to believe in it. I think about, we talked about Mozart. How Mozart died at 35 years of age. 35, created 600 pieces of music. And despite being penniless and buried in a pauper's grave, we still hear his sound 218 years later. We talked about Galileo, how Galileo is the father of modern science, but yet when he lived, he was arrested and threatened with death, horrible death, because people did not hear his sound. I think about this woman, Madame Marie Curie. Madame Marie Curie, I want you to understand that this in science, when you say Madame Marie Curie, you should hear trumpets. You should hear, because this is the bad, like the way men like to talk about sports, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. This is the Michael Jordan, the Tiger Woods, the Serena Williams of science. Madame Marie Curie wasn't French. She was Polish. She lived in France. And as a woman back in the 19th century, you understand, the women of today can imagine what she went through. First of all, being a woman. Second of all, being in science. And when she and her husband, Pierre, did the work with radioactivity, and literally they won a Nobel Prize, they didn't want to give it to her. They recognized her, but they didn't want to give it to her. They just wanted to give it to Pierre. And she fought for it. Her husband, she fought for it because people at that time did not believe that a woman could think on that level. So when they won the Nobel Prize and started carrying around radioactive material, radon in little jars, radium in little jars, because they were working with it all the time, Pierre Curie, he got sick. He had radiation poisoning. And one day he walked out in the streets of Paris and got run over by a horse. Horrible death. Because the radiation poisoning was already starting to affect him. And Marie obviously was devastated because she loved Pierre. She loved him. And because she felt lonely and felt sad and needed love, needed that connection, she fell in love with Pierre's assistant. And despite all that Madame Marie Curie had done, despite all the inventions, despite the things that she had done, because uranium was being used in all kinds of products, gum, hair, but despite everything that she did, when she hooked up with her husband's partner, she was all kinds of hoes. The whole of France thought that she was just the lowest person on the planet. They didn't hear her sound. They didn't hear who she was. They didn't see what she did. All they knew was just one aspect of who she was. Oh my God, she's a woman. Oh my God, she's Polish. And those of you who know French people, if you're not French, you're not really down. It's like French, there's French people, then there's the rest of humankind. Madame Marie Curie didn't care. Because she had told herself a story. She had told herself and saw in her mind the elements of the universe. She saw elements that did not even exist. You have to understand that Madame Marie Curie is the first and only person to have ever won 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 separate subjects, physics and chemistry. And for those of you who had a hard time in science, imagine mastering it to such a unbelievable level that you see beyond what is already known. That was her story. That was the music that was inside of her. So despite the fact that people didn't hear her sound, despite the fact that people didn't understand what she was talking about, despite the fact that she was a woman, despite the fact that she was all a harlot, she went ahead and did the work to earn a 2nd Nobel Prize. And not only did she earn a 2nd Nobel Prize, but she was so influential in her life, in the way she thought, the music, the stories that she told her daughter. Her daughter, Irene, also won a Nobel Prize, her and her husband. Those of you who went to the doctor lately and had an x-ray, Madame Marie Curie was a part of that. Thousands of soldiers in World War I avoided having their arms and legs amputated because little Madame Marie Curie would ride around with her daughter with an x-ray truck. Rudimentary x-ray truck that saved the lives of thousands of men. And you have to think about, not only did she do that, but she did that in World War I. And what was going on during World War I? The Spanish flu. The Spanish flu that killed 50 million people. And yet Madame Marie Curie heard the sound, heard the music inside of her, and she decided to do it anyway. And that's what I want you to understand. Don't just tell a story. When I say discover the value of your story, I'm not just talking about it coming outward. I'm talking about it coming inward. As I told you before, a turquoise is the original gemstone. All cultures knew of turquoise. Turquoise is as old as mankind. When I talked about zircon, this is a gemstone, this beautiful gemstone with the double refracted. This beautiful gemstone is 4.5 billion years old. And if you didn't know that, if you happen to be born in December, and one, you may not have known that this is your birthstone. Two, you may not have understood the significance of it. And three, and because of that, you didn't know the story. That means you didn't understand the value of it. How is that any different than Madame Marie Curie? When you took science in school, you might have remembered Galileo. Those of you who are Star Trek fans, you might know Galileo was the little ship inside the Enterprise. But you may not know who Galileo was. You heard Mozart's music, but you don't really understand his music until you understand who Mozart was. How did he get there? That's the story that you have to tell. That's what happens to me in my mind when you compete in the international speech contest, that you get 7 minutes and 30 seconds to create a sound. It's not about winning. It's about allowing yourself to be transformed inside of you. That's what the book says. Very soon, so altered has his mind become that the workshop can no longer hold him. It has become so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life as a garment, is cast aside. And with the growth of opportunity which fit the scope of his expanding powers, he passes out of it forever. Kathleen Johnson. I used to fly. I was a navigator on C-130s, and I was always into space and space exploration. And I mean, that's how I found out about Galileo, but I didn't know who this woman was until I saw the movie Hidden Figures. I've been to NASA. I've seen the Katherine Johnson buildup, and I always assumed that it was the name of some white woman. Until I saw the movie Hidden Figures and I heard the story of Kathleen Johnson. I saw how the story of how that teacher passed that little 10-year-old black girl living in the deep racist South. Kathleen Johnson graduated. She went to the 10th grade when most black people weren't even getting past the 8th grade because of just the level of racism. For her, math was like music. She heard it. She saw the way numbers could interact with the universe, and she used that. And Kathleen Johnson is the reason why Neil Armstrong was able to one day say, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That little black girl, Creola, Kathleen Johnson, Creola, is the reason why we have a space program, and all the products that we use every day, microwaves, cell phones, all these things happen because this woman heard her sound. She told a story using math. There was that scene in Hidden Figures where they didn't know where John Glenn was going to wind up. They knew how to get him into space. They didn't know where he was going to land. You know, something kind of important. They knew he was going to land somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. And I remember that scene where now the NASA Space Center administrator gave Kathleen Johnson, this little black girl sitting in a room full of white men during the 1960s, where black people were still being hung by trees, on trees, and killed and all kinds of things. Here's this little black girl. She sits there on a blackboard and she does all the mathematical computation. You have to understand that she was sitting there basically as a secretary. But because the administrator knew how she was mathematically, how math was music, she sat there and drew out all the computations. And we're not talking about adding and subtraction. We're talking about serious mathematical physics. Then she figured it all out, knew exactly where it, pulled down the map, and said he should land within 1 or 2 miles right here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. She knew exactly where he was. She saw it in her mind. And she was able to take what she had inside of her and play it in front of all those people. Kathleen Johnson is no different than Mozart. They both heard a sound. They both heard something that changed the world. And at that time, people may not have heard her sound, but now we know. Now we know the value of Kathleen Johnson. Now, when you look at that building, you begin to understand. And next time a space mission goes up, next time we talk about going to Mars or the moon, or Tesla, Elon Musk is doing the things that he's doing, or Jeff Bezos is doing this stuff, it's because of that little black girl named Creola Kathleen Johnson that we're able to do that. Because of this guy named Galileo, we understand the universe. Because of this guy, we understand how it reacts, how it affects us. The importance of being able to tell your story. The importance of being able to hear your sound. That is what happens when you compete in the international speech contest. You have to sit down and say something. And as I tell my client, what you want to say, what would you say to God? If you only had 7 minutes and 30 seconds. It's not about them. It's not about the people and your friends and family and all the people. It's about you. I think Mozart, when he died, I think he knew what he had done, what he had created, not because he wasn't famous, he didn't make money, because he knew that he played his music. I think about Tesla, this guy. Everything we do right now, the lights, the technology, the cell phones, the speakers, the fact that I can broadcast from the city of Chicago, and there are people, my students in China, in India, in Africa, in Europe, in Japan, in the United States, and South, are hearing my voice, hearing my sound because of this guy, Nikola Tesla. Who trained himself. He went to school but never finished college. He knew that he wanted to work with Thomas Edison, and he went to America. He had nothing but like $6 in his pocket, went to America because he wanted to work with Thomas Edison. And he told Thomas Edison about alternating current. And Thomas Edison said, "No, I'm not hearing that. DC, direct current, is the way to go." And despite everything that he did, despite the light bulbs and all the things that he did. Radio started. We learned about Marconi, but it was really Tesla who created the concept of the radio. He saw cell phones 100 years before it was even a thought. He knew that one day we would be able to communicate like that. And yet, years later, Tesla died in a New Yorker hotel. I went there the last time I was in New York. I saw his hotel room. Tesla died in a hotel room in a New Yorker hotel with cats. He had 100 cats. They found him dead with 100 cats in the room, stale crackers, and old milk. That's what they found this man, who died obviously penniless, who died with nobody. This is the way they found him, emaciated and dead. But yet everything that we do today in technology had something to do with this man, Nikola Tesla. Most people don't even know who he is other than the car. They don't understand the significance of what he did in his life. Everyone did not hear his sound. So when you understand, as you looking at this brand new year, as you're beginning to think to yourself, what am I going to do? I am fill in the blank. However you are, we know that life is fleeting. As the commercial that we played, life is fleeting. We already know that there's 828,000 people who are no longer here, who were here this time last year, who are gone. And there's going to be a whole lot more. So the one question that you have to ask yourself is, what is your sound? What is your story? If today is your last day, next week, next month, what do you want the world to remember about you? The only reason why all these people still exist, the only reason why I know who Kathleen Johnson is, I know who Madame Marie Curie is, I know who Galileo is, I know who Tesla is, because I know their story. I know who they are, who they were. I know the trials and tribulations that they had to go through. None of them, life was easy. Being black in the 1960s, 50s, 60s wasn't easy. Being a woman, being black and a woman is still not easy. But look what she did with her time. So that's the question that I ask myself. That's the question that I ask every one of you. We don't have the privilege of living for hundreds and thousands of years. We don't have that privilege. So what are you going to do starting today? Today is January 5th, 2022. What are you going to do to begin to look at yourself? What are you going to do to begin to see how your music resonates with people? What are you going to do? And I don't care what you do. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a musician. You don't have to be an inventor. Whatever you do, the way you cook bread, you make cookies, you raise your children. What is it that you're going to do to create a sound that no one has ever heard? So today is the first day of first show of the brand new year. I've enjoyed being with each and every one of you. Again, my name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemological storyteller. And what I want you to do, what I always want you to do, is take time to look at yourself, look at your friends, look at your life, look at where you are right now. Understand that it's part of a story, and begin to discover the value of your story. Au revoir. Atatela. Have a great day. Bye-bye.